Hi everyone, sorry for the odd lighting. This is MechMasterJ. I'm going to be making a few videos reviewing Armored Core 6 now that I have finished my first playthrough and have done at least one, well, a mission where the fact that I'm in a new run actually changes things. I'm going to start with a few things. I'm going to start with music. Music does not slap for this game. Uh, it is way too subdued. If I compared it to most other mech games, all this music is practically elevator music by comparison, and that's being generous. Okay, it's typically very atmospheric. It feels like stuff that belongs in like cyberpunk stuff or maybe a spaceship type of a scene, but it's not like pop 80s music. It's more like let's have like the very subdued atmospheric synthwave stuff, and it's not a good feeling. Um, Listening to all the music and having it be so samey, right? Whomever they pick, they need to tell them, uh, if they ever work with them again, make some fucking variety. And I don't mean just a little variety here and there. I mean a lot of actual variety in tone. I don't know why the majority of it is somewhat subdued and atmospheric and typically not energetic enough. I don't. I don't even really feel panic. I don't feel anger or aggressive. I don't feel happy. I don't feel sad. I just feel like part of my brain is trying to turn off because this thing wants me to relax somewhat, right? It wants me to feel not even like I've got this down, it's all good, don't sweat it. It's just plain it it's very very not staccato. The opposite of what is it called? Um Staccato is when music is very like instant. Uh, I've forgotten the term. Right? There's not a lot of upbeat staccato music in this game. That's something that would get me a little better. There's not a lot of subdued staccato in this game. That would get me a little better. It's all very. I think it's Alargando if I remember correctly, or Elongado, whatever. It's all like very. If you get what I mean. I should have paid more attention in music classes. Damn. My brother would probably know how to describe it. The music sucks. It's not good. It needs work. It needs variety more than it even needs work because I'm quite certain the fidelity is good and there's plenty of lack of instrumentation to go with plenty of lack of vibes. Right? I feel like I should probably just sit down and, I don't know, get a tab of acid. Not that I do acid, I'm just saying, like, that's the kind of thing I'm put in mind of, right? In terms of pop stereotype. God, this is a thing that might not even communicate to Gen Z, right? Used to be there were tabs of some kind of illicit drug, you would put it on your tongue, and then people would trip balls. Uh, Moving on, right? Graphics. Graphics are a plus in this game. It is something I can hardly complain about. Um, my laptop is 6 years old. It doesn't have multiple terabytes of storage. It has basically a terabyte and a tenth of a terabyte or so of storage. That's if you include the D drive, and that's including the fact you're gonna have to keep some of that open on both drives because you still have to be able to process stuff. Um, so, graphics. I have it on the lowest settings, predictably, because admittedly there's parts of the game where I feel like the visuals are off. right, from the audio. I don't know why. I know it's in line with the audio, right? It is perfectly timed. I can check the explosions and the everything, the rocket flares, everything else that makes a sound effect to say, no, no, it's on time. But the voice lines occasionally feel like they are delayed by a couple seconds, maybe by a second. And that's always a jarring sensation. It's why I couldn't really watch K Return of Kings, for example. That's an anime in the long running ish series. Mostly manga series. It's a very interesting yet weird one. Anyway, that's like the worst it gets, other than having the occasional moment of stutter. I mean moment, right? It's not that it doesn't get noticed, it's that you'll notice it, it might throw you off, but it doesn't happen a lot, right? At least in terms of my stuff, my equipment. Um, Everything looks really nice at the lowest settings, actually. The coral explosions are, and the explosions in general, are impressive. The appearance of the machines, right? If I go and the rocket flares are really nice for like thrusters and things. If I go look at certain visual effects, they're crap and they're stupid. I don't know why a rapid fire energy weapon is shooting bubbles at me. Or alternatively, I guess it's supposed to be shooting sound waves that are visible at me, but it's still stupid. I prefer a basic, straightforward beam. Unless it actually has an effect that's including, like, an explosion at the end somehow. Because, I don't know, discharge or something. And then, right, getting to the actual textures of things. Textures are amazing, right? I'm not exactly looking at rubble and feeling like I can, imagine the sensation of all of it. But there's a lot of stuff where it's like, yeah, that's some sharp rock. There's a lot of stuff where it's like, yeah, yeah, I'd be able to wipe ashes off of that. Or, yeah, that's made of metal and it'd be nice and cold, very hard. I could probably tap on it, right? Um, it's the textures are amazing. The lighting could use a little work here and there. Um, the environment itself is very obviously damaged and war torn. Um, there's parts of it that I don't really think makes sense in terms of the planet's environment, the natural environment that's left. Um, there's stages that sometimes I just don't like them. Uh, this is gonna segue a little bit more into like gameplay. I I'm typically a fan of heavy armor and high damage weaponry, even if you are not shooting a lot of it at a time. Right. I'm the kind of guy that if I could see the enemy numbers, I like a good solid few thousand points lost at a time. Uh, you know, if I see a bar, I want to see a very noticeable bar drop. It doesn't have to be everything, doesn't have to be a quarter, doesn't have to be half, but a noticeable chunk, especially one that doesn't feel like it's a little closer to like your thumb on a piece of paper, right? If you can, like, let's say the bar is like this big, right? If I see a drop that goes that big, right? That's noticeable and I don't like it because of how small it is. If it's something like, maybe something like closer to that per shot, that's nice. Especially if I'm not fighting a boss. Like, dear God, these are this is from software, right? I get that nowadays they include, and once upon a time, they include stuff that, hey, that has a lot of hit points. You're gonna have to go a lot of rounds at it. That's fine, right? That's fine if it's something like that. But if I'm fighting a regular AC, right, and it goes, right, that's a good chunk, and I like that. Doesn't have to be a quarter. Doesn't have to be a fifth. But if you can get me an eighth or a seventh, that looks good, right? If you can get me a tenth, that looks good. The game is very, very pretty. Um, it does have a cutscene that I can't talk too much about because it's in one of the endings. Maybe it'll have more endings that have the same problem, but there's an explosion of sorts at the ending I got in my one finished one through, and it does not handle up well. Right, it's very stuttered when it happens. It's kind of pain in the ass, right? Because everything else more or less runs well. Next, I'm going to talk about speed. Um, and it's going to fall into like things like parts and stuff like that. Um, the the list of parts you need to make a mech, right? You got arm, leg, head, chest, um, FCS, generator, booster, weapons, of course, and then maybe um, a thing called an expansion. So expansion is a thing you gotta unlock later. It takes a bit of time. It would have been really nice to have it unlock a little later, or sorry, a little earlier. Have the points that you get from the arena for it be a little stronger. Have the effects be a little stronger, because if you could bump the plus 15 max, which gets extremely expensive for whichever damage type, maybe bump it up to like plus 18%, or maybe just make it certain flat amounts so that way it works equally well with other weapons and their attack, their weapon fire. That'd be nice, right? But gosh, the parts. There's a lot of parts I didn't bother buying this time around. There's a lot of weapons I didn't bother buying this time around. And it's not just, oh, it's the first playthrough, you're going to be missing a lot of that stuff anyway. I could replay as many of these missions as I want, gain all the money I want, especially from easy missions, and then eventually buy everything. Right? The parts list is significantly reduced compared to prior games. It has some stuff you won't find in prior games, like the laser drones, um, which you gotta get all of the arena cleared for, of course. But, like, how to put it? Radars and sniper rifles were a thing I'd use once upon a time. Grenade cannons are supposed to be a thing. There's stuff missing. I don't know how much of that stuff's missing because I haven't physically located it yet or physically opened it yet, but there's a lot of this stuff where like I can't make an actual meaningful sniper build in this game. And that's dumb. Right? I can get all the missiles I want, but I can't make a freaking sniper build. I can get grenade launchers, I can't get a sniper build. Right? It's not just, oh, well, all those other things are better, especially for range and damage together. It's just plain I want to shoot things from very far away on this map, right? I want to have my mini map out. I want to shoot that thing over there from very far away. I don't have a thing that crunches all of that up to a small little box I can see across the entire area. There is no sniping. Okay, the closest thing you'll find to sniping is you are still detected and you're still visually sighted by the enemy, but the enemy just can't shoot you just yet. Maybe. Except they totally can. Because they get way further weapon ranges with their sniper units than you will ever get with your sniping weapons. And it's not just, oh, well, you could do manual aim instead of having the hard lock. That's not it. That's not what I mean, right? I mean, like, once upon a time, I could shoot something from 1,000 meters away, from a full kilometer away. The best I can find is half a kilometer at best, right? Just approximate range, 400 to 600 kilometers for whatever actually has a meaningful ability to lock on that effectively at that range. Because heads will affect that, I think. I'm really not sure, right? I have no idea. So that's dumb, right? I can't actually avoid being spotted by enemies and still maybe have to grapple with things like rail cannons or something. There's nothing in this game where it's actually genuinely bona fide long term or long range. It's not a good game. That's a very bad game when it says that it's long term to be still very noticeably close. Right? I don't have to be like, oh, you would punch them with a 1 inch punch range all the time. Uh Thankfully. But I may as well just be firing a rifle and have it be that range, right? It's just rifle range. Basic rifle range, not even scoped rifle range, just basic rifle range. That's what it feels like relatively to the size of the machines. What else? Um, there's some strange part assignment limitations. The melee weapon can only go on the left hand, and the laser shields and laser bucklers can only go on the left shoulder. There's no explanation for this. Right, there's literally no explanation for this. It's not like, oh, are you right-handed? Well, then we'll put those on the left. No, it's literally just we only gave you them for one side of the machine. Right? I can't do two weapons of melee. Right? That's not even an option for your OS tuning. Right? There's no, oh, I can use two laser bucklers. That's not in the OS tuning either. And those would have been very simple things to include in the OS tuning, which it takes a little while to unlock. In this game's first mission, its very first mission, you don't get to pick a unit. You are handed a unit. It doesn't matter if you don't like the kinds of weapons it gives you, rather than the amount of efficiency of those weapons it gives you, right? I'm fine with missiles. I'm not that happy with laser blades and really never have been. This one doesn't really do much better, but it only functions well as a weapon in this game because the enemies in this game are and everything in this game is very slow, right? And then you gave me a rifle? I couldn't select anything with a shotgun or a machine gun or a laser rifle rather than a rifle? Come on. I've played plenty of Armored Core games. I've played 4, 4 Answer, 5, and 5 Verdict Day. That's 4 games. It's not all the games, it's not half the games even, but that's a good chunk of the games. Okay, I played games where I had choices of which of these machines, these armored cores, which once upon a time you would have called them in Next, though the name was called Armored Core for the game, right? Thank you for unifying that, right? Much appreciated, actually. I do appreciate it, right? But your Armored Core, once upon a time, you could select it. You got 4 in Armored Core 4 to select from, and they had different fighting styles to start with, and different things they focused on otherwise. For Armored Core 4 Answer, it was 6 units to select from. There was a little bit of redundancy in 6, but it wasn't by much. Sure, not everything's always going to be viable, but to hand someone only one option, what's up with that? Is there a reason for that other than the gameplay? Because here's the thing, this entire game doesn't just do ludonarrative dissonance. It does ludonarrative what the hell is going on. I'm going to be very succinct here. The plot I played, there are parts I enjoyed because they catch you by surprise or because they're intelligent. And then there's parts where it's like, really? This is what you did? And there's other parts where it's like, what are you actually doing? There's not enough explained for this to be going on and be natural. I played a particular run through, and this will be spoilers, where there's a character named Air. They're basically one of those, you have someone in your head / on your shoulder type of characters, where they're an extra voice that the main character in whatever anime or video game would typically have a chat with. You're playing a voiceless character, though, so it's really awkward, right? It feels like she is unwelcomed in the conversation, and she is just talking to someone who has no interest, because that's how a lot of silence works when it's perpetual and someone doesn't shut up, right? It feels like, please stop talking, rather than, oh, we're going to have an intelligent conversation. And I get that she's supposed to give a sort of a percentage of the perspective on things that happened prior and things going on now and things that could go on later. She takes forever to actually be intelligent enough to realize her people are being killed and that she has to fight you, her damn self, if she is going to stop you from doing it. Right? You have attacked one coral institution, which is how, or well, coral, whatever they call it, where there's a bunch of it. One coral plant, I guess you could call it, because it's basically just radiation and shit, which is how she gets in your head in the first place. And then you attack another one after being led there. Oh, congratulations, and no one talked to you about doing that differently, because the first time went so well and was very clearly a destabilizing event to the nature of the planet. And then, eventually, you go off and you don't quite do it a third time. It's more like you do it twice. You go and solve some problems that 2 major factions and like 2 really minor factions are doing, along with a big overarching group that is hypothetically really badass and then gets screwed over in giant planned operations. Because apparently everything has to be pinned on the hopes of a giant metallic robot worm. I get that robots can be giant creatures, A giant worm is not exactly the most impressive concept, and it's very obvious it's a bad idea. No one would make a giant worm unless they are terraforming the place, and specifically terraforming the place in a way that has to have tunnels built. And then after like the third event that accidentally makes more of this coral actually flare by accident because you weren't planning on it, but it happens anyway because all the problems have been fucking happening. Suddenly it's, oh, I've realized that we're having problems where my people are having to be killed from time to time. As if the first time wasn't already a problem after, the second time rather, which is the first time after she meets you and gets stuck in your head. And then you get to a point where you do that one all over again, but on a bigger scale. And then she says, you know what, I'm just really tired of the fact that you keep killing my people. So, screw you, I'm going off into the giant satellite cannon, and then I'm going to kill you myself because you've somehow magically arrived here. I don't even really remember how you arrived there. This is an incomplete game, as far as I care, because there's so many gaps in logic. Okay, this isn't Capcom and Exoprimal where it's just cool, it's dinosaurs versus robots, just do it. This is a game that is structured to have intelligence to it. It doesn't have intelligence to it, but it's structured to have intelligence to it. It's hitting the right plot beats at the wrong times, in the right sequence, roughly speaking, and it can't be bothered to use any narratives in the right ways to loop everything, or to not loop, but like to put everything together, right? You start with, oh, 621, and you have handler Walter, and then you are a nameless, voiceless person who's a Gen 4 enhanced human, whatever that actually means. I literally don't know. Apparently, each generation may or may not have had certain kinds of enhancements. Maybe they're random across each of them. I don't even know, right? And the long story is you're supposed to be helping handler Walter figure out how to make sure the Rubiconian Research Institute thing doesn't have its stuff unleashed upon the rest of the known universe, and have the coral siphoned from the planet because it's a problematic power source. And so the response isn't to go fight the enemies, it's to blow up the planet with a repeat of the other thing that happened in the planet's history. At least that's the route I got. This isn't a route that makes sense, and it's pretty much the evil route, because you end up fighting air, you execute, the last Rubiconian, you blow up all the Rubiconians, because Rubicon... You know how there's the whole phrase, Soylent Green is people, right? For those of you in that generation that you've watched Soylent Green, Coral are Rubiconians. You got Soylent Green is people, and then what you did with that is you said, let's eat everyone. Not let's stop the production, but let's continue eating people and eat literally everyone on the planet until people stop. right? And the corporations had to go screw themselves, and there had to be a closure by the actual planetary closure administration that didn't effectively close anything the first time because of a bunch of corporations are visiting you didn't work at your job enough to do the job right. I don't know. I'm just feeling very reminiscent of. I feel. I'm feeling reminiscent of Gallarhorn of from Gundam Iron Blood Orphans. I'm feeling reminiscent of whatever the freaking organizations are in Gundam Witch from Mercury, even the Earth Fed from Gundam Unicorn, just these entire idea of like somehow the observational governmental slash non-biased body is a complete and total failure. This is a trope that pops up a lot in mech shows, and I don't know where it comes from. And that's bugging me right now. Right? I could attribute it to ideas like general corruption, but there's not enough information in this game to even know. There's not enough information in Gundam Witch from Mercury either, for that matter. Not for a good solid while. So I'm gonna do, because I have the parts I need to beat this game. And because there's missions I haven't done. And because there's 6 endings. I'm gonna finish this game. I'm gonna make another video later on. I'm gonna actually put kind of the strike through some of the points I've talked about today, right? And I will double check this video to see what I haven't talked about yet so I can make a different video. This is a longer one. I apologize for that if you've been looking for something around the same length as the previous video. But I'm going to finish this game. I'm not going to be happy with the game in certain ways. Like, I didn't like most of the gameplay as a heavy armor build. I wouldn't say I'm happy per se with the gameplay as a lightweight build focused almost entirely on speed. I'm gonna say it gives me something to fall into a rhythm of, which is not exactly a high mark per se, but to be fair, that's usually how I find my fun. Is falling into a routine. Like I have other games where it's like, okay, this is the weapons I use. I'm doing those. Here's my typical strategies. If I can get comfortable with that, I can get comfortable with that. I can enjoy myself a bit. I can think a little more about everything else going on, even. Right? This plot, right? There's more to it. There's gotta be. Because if there's not, this game, the gameplay itself, on a basic level, will be good only in as much as I have set myself up to have a good gameplay time, given the parts available and given the rest of the enemy opposition available. But it's not going to be my type of Armored Core. I'm glad that I haven't had to play a mission and then lose money off of playing that mission run. But this is not a game I recommend per se so far. I like it well enough in terms of the habit. I like it because it's a mech game. I like it because it follows the general conventions. It is a very difficult one of it, and that's worth something in its own way. As much as I'm not too much of a fan of exactly the ways in which it is made difficult, right? Typical gripes with Dark Souls is, well, shit, I can't attack all that much. Ironically, this one lets you attack a lot more than previous Armored Core games, right? And that needs to be said, by the way. But this game's wonky. It doesn't fit. It's nearly antithetical to Armored Core in how the parameters and the influences are designed with the lessons from the Souls games. The same games that once upon a time this game existed and Dark Souls didn't, and then Dark Souls existed as the replacement of this game series for a decade. Actually, I think pretty much exactly a decade, which of course pisses me off. Okay, it's been 10 years. Part of the problem I have with this game isn't even with this game, I'll be honest. One of the problems I have is the only things to practice with to think you're gonna get used to this game style are games that if you're looking for the next oldest Armored Core or next newest Armored Core game, you have to go buy something 2 generations of gaming console old and hasn't been sold in quite a while. Then you have to go buy the game, gotta go buy controllers, blah blah blah. It's a lot of expenditure. Or you gotta buy certain games that were spiritual successors that aren't made the same way and that definitely aren't gonna play the same way to either of them. Right? Daemon Ex Machina, I can have my unit fly around freely for the most part in the air, with some limitations on occasion. In this, I definitely can't. In certain Armored Core games, it's very hard to have uh, a lot of flight time, but you can do it. This game hates flight time. This game hates jumping. This game hardly wants you to hover. But I'm going to finish this game. I'm going to figure out if there's something else to all of this, because there's a mystery afoot.